memorization it takes to run a major city police department just in a normal process day with all the things that happen is overwhelming. So this transpiring along with the normal things that are continuing to happen in the city is difficult.
Here now to discuss Pete Hegseth, Kevin Paul Scott, and Steve Rogers. Pete, I'll start with you. You know, it's interesting. He says he's running on fumes. Feels like the country's running on fumes, right? This is wearing us all down, and I think it's not just what's happened, but what's going to happen next because we don't know. Yeah, and that's what he says. They're still running a police department in a major city, and Chief Brown really has been a voice of clarity, a voice of courage, saying straight up what happened. We don't need to disentangle the motives here. This one guy wanted to kill white cops. Black Lives Matter was a motivator, but also speaking to the community there and saying, hey, it's time to come together. We're asking a lot of cops. We need your support, but also doing what's necessary. He was challenged today. Should you have used that bomb? He said, I'd use it again because it saved the lives of my officer. That's what people need to hear. Straightforward, but honest. And this is a guy that reformed that department and has responded well in this crisis. Well, I think that's where the rub is, because Pete said it was Black Lives Matter that sparked this guy to kill people, where other people saying it was the death of two black people shown on video earlier in the week that sparked him to do this. Listen, we know he was sick, he was evil. No one does this without that kind of depraved kind of mind. But that's what we have right now, a country that's torn apart with different opinions on the same topics.
Charles, it's torn apart because of a lot of the rhetoric that's coming out of the mouths of politicians. Look, for the governor of that state, Mark Payne, to come out and Minnesota, to come out and immediately say this was a racial incident was wrong. But let me add this also. There has been some healing. The beginning, there's some light. Chief Brown is a great, great leader. He's beginning to help bring us together. But that mom, that wonderful mom who got before the cameras in her tears and utter hurt this morning, she praised the Dallas Police Department for saving her life and the life of her children. We need to hear more from her.
I'm glad you brought that up. I want to share that with the audience because it was one of the many touching moments that have come out of this horrific tragedy. Let's take a listen.
Ever since he was a little boy, he said he wanted to become a police officer. And he said he was going to do it. He was a good cop. He was honest. I don't want this happening to anybody else and going through what we're going through right now, because now we're -1.
That was actually Officer Zamarripa's mom. He was a three-time Iraqi vet. He was also a really committed member of the law enforcement community. And the soundbite that Steve was talking about, we're going to get that for you as well, because it was equally as touching. I want to go out to you, Kevin, because David Brown has emerged as something of a star, a calming voice here, someone who's no nonsense when it comes to police work, but he also understands there's a different side, another element to this that it's not, the police don't have the answer. Steve mentioned politicians, but it's got to be healed one way or the other.
No, and what the world is looking for, and these communities in particular, is leadership, and they're finding it with the police chief of Dallas. We're seeing it here in Atlanta with our mayor, Democrat Mayor Kasim Reed, where they're speaking truth. They're saying they're not discounting some of the objections and frustrations within the black community, and at the same time they're defending police officers and saying we've got to restore order. That's what we need, is the kind of leadership that looks at this in an honest way, in an intelligent way, and really speaks truth to the American people, instead of using this to further divide us. And that's unfortunately what some politicians have done.
And the question, Charles, is whether the president will do that tomorrow.
Right.
He's missed moment after moment after moment. Some governors have done it. As you mentioned, Governor Dayton, Minnesota, just threw grease on the fire and stoking racial flames. The president has a huge platform tomorrow to finally move past blaming it on guns or blaming it and have an honest approach that stands beside law enforcement. You have to start there, because the minute you throw cops under the bus, you only create a more disparate situation.
And keep in mind that the police are the first level of government that people come in contact with. So they're going to take their frustrations out on the police. But God bless our police officers nationwide. Under the most extraordinary conditions, they're working. And Pete, you're right. We need a leader in this country that's going to stand by the side of our police officers and be very truthful and transparent.
You know, you listen to Chief Brown, and he talks about the other elements that go into this, the mental health issues, the economics of our country. And, you know, I think about, grown men having to sell loose cigarettes or bootleg DVDs. President Obama really, in my mind, should be focused on maybe if I had a better economy, maybe if I had a nation that was moving in the right direction when no one had to feel this sort of friction. Maybe if the same tide was lifting all ships. But the divisiveness, it doesn't even start and stop when it comes to this kind of stuff, does it, Pete?
No,
it goes on and on. Almost every single topic has been defined by the divide and conquer.
Sure has. And when there's a lot of tough issues to be confronted, like families and communities without fathers and without economic opportunities and without equal education, inner city schools failing generation after generation after generation, mostly in urban communities led by Democrat mayors who just do the same thing and it never changes. Why do we not confront that?
Though? They stay in power, right?
Yes, that's right.
But you know who becomes the mother and father to those broken homes? The police officer out on the street. That's why it's important to get cops back in community policing. They know the who, what, when, where, and why of each neighborhood.
Yeah.
Pete, that's a good point. These cops become the moms and the dads, and they do a great job.
You know, Kevin, it's a complicated web, but I also see this when we drill deeper inside. You know, there's historic elements to it, there are current event elements to it, but I also see the economics of it as well. And I just, you know, when a nation feels hopeless altogether, that's when you get the finger pointing, and that's when you get the powder keg that the chief of police of Philadelphia described.
Oh, you're certainly right. There is a huge economic element because a lot of this is built on the backs of people feeling disenfranchised without a way out of these opportunities. And unfortunately, the president's prescription for this has been more government instead of more jobs. And that's what they need. We need more jobs, more opportunity to bring people up and level the playing field. And when that happens, that's when you really start to see reconciliation take place.
The police chiefs around the country, you work to beat, you know the police very well. They've been put in such an awkward position, guys. I mean, who's gonna come to their rescue? Is it the general public? It's, you know, these politicians they have their own agendas. I don't really know. Maybe I become cynical, but I don't think many of them care.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Pete. The American people will come to the rescue, and they'll come to the rescue by embracing the police officers in their community. They'll come to the rescue by throwing out of office these career establishment politicians who are serving no purpose but to serve themselves.
I hear that all the time. Congress has an 8% rating, and guess what? I think 99% of them get reelected.
But Charles, times have changed, and we're going to see something happen in November.
You're seeing it right. No, you're right. We're seeing it right now. Chief Brown, mayors, commissioners, governors, because a void needs to be filled. The president's not doing. They're stepping in and doing it. And at this moment in time, it's those leaders speaking truth, and they got to be calling for patience, because we get this immediate narrative, whether it's hands up, don't shoot, or hey, he said he was going for his license, but all we have is one side of the story.
Right.
You know, equal justice requires due process, and we throw people under the bus right away. We got to have leaders that say, step back, take a breath, let's get the facts here.
What do you make of that, Kevin? When it's one thing for social media and the media itself to sort of jump on these things and start to speculate, but what do you make of these politicians who immediately either A, speculate on what really went down when we don't know, even when there's video, and B, push their agenda without even trying to resolve the problems?
It's disgusting, it's disappointing, and that's why there's a failure of leadership and a general distrust about Washington, D.C. And I think these guys are hitting the nail on the head. You're seeing leadership come from local police chiefs, mayors, and governors who get it, and you look up at Washington, D.C., and you say, they're not doing anything to fix it, and you hear the same old lines out of Barack Obama, and that's where people are frustrated, and whether we like it or not, that's why Donald Trump and the likes have emerged, because people are saying, we're tired of what we're seeing, we want something different.
There's no doubt about that, guys. Thank you all very much. A really critical, important day. Also, shifting gears a little bit, it was a record day on